Well, good morning, everybody. Well, I'm Badr Benjeloun. It's my pleasure to meet you again in this new conference by the INRA webinar series dedicated to discuss trends and innovations in agriculture. I would like to welcome all the participants from different countries for taking the time to attend this webinar and probably also to enrich this session by their questions and comments. Then I would like to thank warmly our guest speaker for accepting our invitation to share his deep experience with us. I will give the floor directly to my colleague, Dr. Muha Farrahi, to introduce our guest speaker and the webinar topic. Please go ahead, Dr. Farrahi. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a great pleasure to have with us today Dr. NASSERELLAH. It's really an honor and a privilege for me to introduce him. As you know, Dr. NASSERELLAH has many years of experience in plant breeding, especially in durum wheat breeding, and he has gathered a lot, I will say a lot, and several attributes. Dr. NASSERELLAH is a very hard-working scientist, very humble, and he does not hesitate to share the knowledge with everyone who asks for it. And Dr. NASSERELLAH is an INRA scientist. He retired in 2017 after more than 35 years of service to INRA Morocco. He is now a consultant with National Flour Mill Federation, FNM, at Casablanca, Morocco. Dr. NASSERELLAH is a graduate from ELHAQ Hassan the Institute for Veterinary and Agriculture in Rabat. He holds a master's degree from University of Minnesota in 1982. It was a combined master's degree between ELHAQ Hassan's second and University of Minnesota. He held also a PhD degree, was in plant breeding, master's degree was in plant breeding. He held also a PhD degree in plant breeding and plant pathology from North Dakota State University in Fargo in 1991. As you have seen in his flyer, he is a winner of several awards. I will cite here 4 more important awards. Was the Research and Development Awards from the Moroccan Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Agriculture in 2002, the Food and Agriculture Organization FAO Award of Merit in 2004, and the Prix Hassan II was the Ministry of Agriculture Award in 2009, and finally the International Plant Resistant Insect Award in 2014 for his work on Haitian fly. Dr. NASSERELLAH, during his work at INRA, has coordinated several projects. I will cite the most important one was OptiWheat in 2008, TreatyMed in 2007, and improvement durum wheat for water use efficiency, IDUWE in 2006, and 2 ICARDA projects, Earden in 2005 and one again in 1998. And the list goes on, but it was the most important project. He is a consultant for several other projects within the country and outside the country, mainly on cereal breeding. During his career at INRA, Dr. Salah has released, with the collaboration of his team, several varieties, mainly triticale and durum wheat, more than 20 durum wheat varieties. He is a very productive scientist. During his career at INRA, he published more than 60 articles in peer-reviewed journals, more than 100 scientific communications, and 12 book chapters. He is also a supervisor for many master and PhD students. During his stay at INRA in Sattat, he was also an adjunct professor in the Science and Technology faculty in Sattat, mainly from 1997 to 2016, who has delivered an advanced course on plant breeding. And it's a great pleasure to have him today for his seminar during this series of INRA webinars. And the title of this seminar will be The Agriculture Research and its Response to Cereal Value Chain Integration. Thank you, Dr. Salah, for accepting our invitation, and the floor is to you, Dr. Salah. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Before giving the floor to Dr. Nasrallah, thanks, Dr. Farahi, for this nice introduction that highlighted some aspects from the broad experience of our guest speaker. Just some technical aspects before giving the floor to him. I would like to mention that the conference will take up to 40 minutes, and then we will have the discussion and question answer session that will take up to 50 minutes. For the discussion, please post your written question via the chat on Zoom. Please fill in your name and affiliation before the question, and do not wait until the end of the conference to ask them. You can ask them directly. You can post your question in English or French as well. We look forward to listening to you, Dr. Nasrallah, and to knowing more about this topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Benjeloun, and thank you, Dr. Farahi. The pleasure is mine. I'm from INRA, and I'm happy to return and work with my colleagues. You made a good introduction for me, maybe too good, but I hope I was working. I was just doing my job. And okay, so how do I get this thing here? When you ask me what the title of the presentation I would make, I choose this one, Agricultural Research and its Response to Cereal Value Chain Integration, because I wanted to share with my colleagues my experience outside the research system. And when I got my retirement, I went to work with the Federation of Millers, National Federation of Millers in Morocco. And I have learned many, many things. Just some things were new to me. So I would like that at least my colleague inside research will be aware of these things. Okay. So as an introduction, I will read this for you so that I don't waste lots of time. Research aims to improve humans' well-being. I mean, the well-being is the last.
Dr. Nasrallah?
Wait.
Can you make your presentation in full screen, please?
There. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the well-being of humans is the objective, the aim of research. The stakeholders and the economy will adopt the research output if these output responds to their needs. So researchers must learn this and must adapt the research to the value chain for the sought impact. The value chain is composed of many people. Everyone has a different definition for what they need. the justification of the projects. Oh, there are two things that I would like to define and to say. Two major trends happened since the 1980s. The first one is globalization or free trade agreements. And the second is that the value system started their integrations. Oh, globalization, the definition of globalization or trade unification here is the process by which people and goods move freely or easily across borders. Globalization has impacted economies through increased trade volume, and this is what people wanted, increased trade volume. And also globalization improved the choice of products and product quality. Globalization also increased competition and changed market preferences and performance. Okay, the value chain integration, the value chain or the value system. Okay, the integration of it is the process by which multiple enterprises within a shared market segment collaboratively plan, implement, and manage the flow of goods, services, and information along the value system in a way that increases customer perceived value. And it optimizes the efficiency of the chain. You know, there is horizontal integration and vertical integration. And if you look at the Morocco Green Plan that we have known for so many years, it is only a plan for both horizontal integration, which lies in aggregations that are defined by the ministry, and vertical integration, which lies in the fact that big producers will take care of small producers. So this is kind of vertical integration. Value chain integration is a way to overcome the competition, the external competition. Okay, now how do we relate to these two things, globalization and integration? I would say it like a story here. So free trade was invented in order to improve the economy. Okay, that's a good objective. It has benefited active economies, also a good thing, but brought more competition along. I mean, we could be sitting here in Morocco, let's say a factory that produces pasta, and the next day there is a company from Europe or the United States or Canada, and they bring a very, very good quality products. The Moroccan bakers will see that the clients will choose the best quality or the better quality products and forget about their own product. So they have to improve their quality. National economies had to improve their performance because, okay, the trade volume increased, but it increased for some and it did not increase for some others, or maybe decrease for others. So the national economies, they work on their value system integration. The value system integration is the only way to improve overall performance of a value system. Okay, during this process of integration, there are lots of arguments on commerce, organization, technology, sometimes politics, sometimes many other things unrelated to technology. But all the partners within a value system or value chain will have to say what they have in mind and at the end, find a way to correct the situation. New preference and demands from partners. Okay, new products come from abroad. People see what they could buy. People see what they exist, and the producer inside the value system, let's say in Morocco, they also choose what they have to do, but they have to improve their way to do it. So sometimes they recall there is something called research, and at the end they will go and call the researchers to provide them with what they want. So what we will do, how do we approach this job that we want to do in the seminar? Okay, we will look at the performance of a crop-oriented research program. And in my case, durum with breeding program, because the thing that I have done most in the past years. And then we will see how the research dealt with and impacted the value chains. I mean, our products, the varieties, were they accepted, were they sold, did they have any value, anything, etc. And then we will look at the current value chain status problems in Morocco and their views and the trends they are knowing. And then we look at the needs in terms of research and the organization of future research. Okay, when everyone knows what's a breeding program, this is what we have been doing for years. You have the genetic resources that you have to take traits out of them and introduce them into other varieties and so on. You make, so you choose the parents, you cross the parents, you select from a generation from F2 to F3, F4, F5, 6, 7, 8. You might stop at F6 or so, but you might go up to F8. If the character is not polygenic, then you can stop early. If it's too polygenic, then you have to go fewer more generation. And then after that, you go on the observation line, which you put in many sites, because you have to test how they do in these sites. And then you have the preliminary yield trial, the intermediate yield trial, the advanced yield trials, and so on. And after you decide that your selections that were good, you increase them and you present them to registration, and commission will choose the best one according to the data. After the registration and production, you will go through the seed increase. Actually, I put this arrow here to show that seed increase might start earlier. If the variety is accepted, that's good. You are 2 years in advance. If it's not accepted, you throw away what you have increased. So here you see that it takes a long time to produce a variety. But we have a long path and a short path. This is the same diagram. Long path is when we make the crosses, the F2, the F3, the F4, and so on. And the short path is that we take advanced lines that were produced by international institutions, mostly. We have a program of sharing with them, and they send us every year, let's say 200, 300 lines. And we test them in many sites, and we choose the best that we have to advance later on. And then the rest of the diagram is the same. But there is a short way and a long way. This is the important thing. What happened during all these years, I put it in here like a few little squares. Before 1975, there were the varieties that were selected by the French and the Moroccan after the French, then before 20, 30 years. These varieties were good selections. They were called Selbera, Zeramek, Kiperunda. They have good quality of grain, big grains, yellow grains. But their problem was the factors of adaptation. They were late, they were tall, and so they had very low yield. The average national yield at that time was 5 quintals per hectare. Okay, so right after that one, INRA started renewed and started their program. The variety Cocorit was imported from CIMIT. CIMIT is the international center that makes lines and distribute them. Same as Icarda, who does the same thing for the dryland areas. And then there was a variety Khori in 76. These were early, short, but productive, but they didn't have good grain quality. They had lots of yellow berry. So they were like durum wheats, all right, but their grain looked like bread wheats. So you could make flour out of it. They were not vitreous. So researchers had to correct this, and they selected other varieties. Then in that move came the variety Marzaq in 84, Karim in 85, Aksal 65, which was very early. They were quite correct, and we were happy for sometimes. These variety, Marzaq and Karim, will last more than 25 years. They're unbeatable. But we started in right after that to try to improve on Marzaq and Karim. We had released many varieties, Subu, Rabi', Sarif, Tansif, Masa, Tassaut. And then right after that, there was Jawhar, Anwar, Yasmin. Here you see the years, Tariq, Urq, and so on. These were with some of them with better quality. Some of them had drought tolerance, and so they should have been accepted. They have been bought by a seed company, and somebody might ask why we had so many varieties in this decade. It's because there was an opening of certified seed industry in Morocco, and many people, many companies were investing in it. So our management thought that it's better to have many varieties to sell to the different companies and have everyone be happy. These varieties also from Sbu to Tomouh are mostly either lines that came directly from Simit or Ricardo, or they were crosses, Moroccan crosses of lines that come from this. So all the blood that's circulating around here is introduced blood. Then we had this long period of drought and so on, and Hassan fly. Drought is coupled to Hassan fly. And the director of INRA was screaming for having or producing Hassan fly resistant varieties. So we worked on Hassan fly and drought since 1989. And it took us more than 12 years to produce these varieties. We produced other varieties before that, but they were not accepted into catalog. So these varieties, Irden, Nassera, Shawi, Hamriya, Marwan, were produced as a result of that effort. But we found that when we put these varieties in rainfall favorable area, they were susceptible to leaf rust. That was not very good. So we have to keep them for the south. So we started to look for something that is resistant to Hassan fly, drought, tolerant to drought, and resistant to leaf rust. And we have found Faraj. Faraj was a cross that was actually performed by Icarda, and that was between a Moroccan varieties, one of those Irdem, and an Icarda line that was holding many resistances. So Faraj came as a variety that is resistant to or tolerant to 5 things: Hassan fly, leaf rust, root rot, septoria, helminthosporium. Okay, so that's only 5, but it's a drought tolerant variety. After we had a call from the FNM, I think in 2003, and we had to develop Louisa, IPRI, Hamadi, which had good grain quality and were yellow color. All these varieties before were not extra yellow color, they were just amber. The market was asking for amber, not for yellow. And during these years, the market has changed and started to ask for extra yellow grain color. Okay, this is just a reminder. Evolution of past breeding objective rule, it takes from 10 to 18 years to develop a variety from the first cross to the last. So what were we doing? Prior to 1980, the crosses were targeting yield and adaptation. In the 1980s, the crosses were targeting yield, adaptation, grain visual quality. We had only visual quality. We had no equipment to do the evaluation of grain quality. And then leaf rust resistance. In the 1990s, we worked on integration of Hassan fly resistance using interspecific crosses. In the years 2000 and up, we worked to correct Hassan fly material, because when we cross with bread wheat and we cross with so different foreign material, the quality and many other things were all mixed up. So we have to correct this by finding a good combination of root rot tolerance, leaf rust, leaf blotch, grain quality, color. Okay, we had the variety farage, but the variety farage needed more color. Currently, the breeders in place are composing and integrating and focusing on grain quality. Okay, here is diagram. Most of these varieties were sold in the beginning like this, and some of them dropped out little by little, and some of them were selected by farmers. And here you see the variety Karim. Karim is chosen by the farmers because it has wide adaptation, high yield potential, not a good grain color, but it's a tough variety. And the name Karim came to mean, for farmers, it came to mean durum wheat. So when they wanted to say, give me durum wheat seed, they say, give me Karim seed. So this is one thing that's worked for this variety. Here I have some pictures, the crosses that we were doing and the way we were selecting. We used small plots like these for pedigree selection, or small rows, like half-meter row for selection, or big rows, or yield trials, big yield trials, and some demonstrations. Okay. How do we rate this work all these years? I mean, before there was Dr. Wasu Abdullah, who was a breeder before. So there was a quick response of breeding at first, thanks to international programs. I mean, those lines that they gave us, like Karim, Marzaq, were a quick fix to the problem that we have with those old varieties. Impact was obvious. The varieties were sold and adopted. And then Hassan fly resistant and yellow grained varieties were considered as success. In fact, they were big changes, and they were our own crosses or crosses that were managed by us with Icarda or by us with Simit, and the INRA and Icarda, INRA and Simit. But I think we have made a mistake by registering too many varieties in the era between 87 and 97, thinking that we will sell them because the private company, the new private companies, they had something else in mind. There was no connection with other value chain segments. I mean, we tried sometimes to make connection with the millers, and they promised something, but they never called back. This trial of contacts happened in like 1988, 89. But then in 2003 or 4, the FNM called INRA back and tried to renew collaboration, and they worked with us. Okay, awareness and investment in grain quality were low. and we had no means to invest in grain quality. We just made the visual selection, and the selection that was based on simple apparatus like test weight and 1,000 kernel weight. That's all we could do. In this area, I mean, from the 70s, there was climate and market swing. From 1976, there were severe, dry, and wet years. Sometimes there were 2-3 years that were dry on a row. Okay, it was those years were very tough. And then there was a change in markets, preference, and norm. Before, in the 80s, nobody talked about yellow color. In 2010, everybody wants yellow color. So I wish we could have known before and started. But we started, in fact, to work on yellow color like in 2002 and 3. We started to be aware of it, and we have selected something. Many new foreign actors. I mean, from the 1980s now, there must be more than 25 companies that either have INRA varieties or foreign varieties from foreign breeders that they're saying. That's a lot of competition for INRA and for Sonacos, which was the public certified seed sale company. Now, these days, the value chain is getting itself together. People in the value chain, especially the Federation of Millers, are pushing toward integration. They say, let's get together. They are holding many meetings with INRA also, and they are trying to push the people to integrate the value system. Okay, I'm talking about the value system for wheat in Morocco. Here you have the upstream, and here you have the downstream. In the upstream segments, we have the seed companies, the inputs, the equipments, and service providers, the obtainers or the breeders, the scientific research. Okay, seed companies and scientific research, they are all working with seed, but scientific research in INRA, there is agronomy, there is quality, etc. There is many things that are concerned with durum and bread wheat and other crops also. And here we have the segment of production. Yes, farmers and aggregation, that's in French. We have crop handlers, what are crop handlers? Crop handlers are collectors, storers, importers, and generally traders. So those, they provide some service within the value chain, and they provide logistics, storage, that's good, and they make some money. And then we have the segments of transformation, flour and semolina mills. We have also pasta and biscuit factory. This is transformation. And then distribution or consumption here segment. There is the distribution, which have the wholesalers and retailers and the bakeries. Bakeries are considered as part of consumption. Now, there is the status of this value chain. Here we put the value chain. The blue arrows are the flow of the products. Okay, and the pink arrows are the flow of the requirements. That's like they say in French, the client is king. So the final consumer is the biggest king. He orders the bakeries, and the big bakeries are considered to be the kings of retail store and millers. So they transmit these requirements to the millers, which transmit the requirements to the grain production. And at the end, farmers will have to find a way, let's say, to produce that quality that all these people are asking for. So if he doesn't know, he will ask around and look at the Ministry of Agriculture and this Onca and so on, people that will tell him how to do it. Okay, here I forgot to mention, this is not part of the value chain, but it's the counterpart from the public sector and the professional organization. So here we have the professional representation, and we have the financing institution. And then in the public sector, we have parts or parties that produces the laws, the legislations, that organize the norms, certification, homologation, registration, and development. All of these are activities that are necessary to this physical value chain. Okay, so and in Morocco we have quite a complete value chain for cereal. It's very good organization, and it has benefited from a long experience, and so far it's going well. Although I am saying here it works, but with arguments and blames. Okay, arguments and blames are good to exchange from time to time because it's obliged some people to change, and that's how the better change happens. I will give an example of what did happen from 1980s to now with the seed sector, because we had most of our relationship in INRA was with the seed sector, and we were observing and so on. And this, what I will be saying here, is taken from a study by GTZ, I think in 2012, and these were the conclusions. At that time, 2012, there was 23 breeding companies for breed wheat, 16 breeding companies for durum wheat, and INRA owned 36% of these varieties. So in 2012, these varieties multiplied from almost 0 to 23. That's a big development. But the number of varieties were not corresponding to those. There was the varieties that were registered were not the one that were sold. So there was a disproportion of varieties registered and increased. Breeder rights, I mean ownership of sold variety, indicated that 64% of the varieties sold were INRA variety, and foreign were 4. That's for foreign seed companies, and INRA had less than 10% each, which make, I think I remember there was one company that has 10%, 8, and then 6, and then 4. That's all. So INRA was still holding the majority in terms of sold variety, the breeder's right of sold varieties. There were 16 seed companies selling breed wheats and 13 selling durum wheat varieties. The majority of sales actually was done by Sonacos, 87% for breed wheats and 92% for durum wheat. So Sonacos was the monopoly. There was no, the other companies, they represented, well, let's say 10% of the markets. INRA new releases number is constant in durum wheat, but INRA slowed down the number of releases in breed wheats. Only one foreign breeders for breed wheat measured and became a major breeder in Morocco, and that was due to his relationship with Sonacos. So all the varieties of that breeder were sold by Sonacos, and since Sonacos sold most of the grain, he also was supposed to be the one breeder that sells most of the seeds. No variety became, no seed company became major in durum wheat. Durum wheat at that time was still held by the variety Karim and Marzak and few of the newer one. So this situation here tells me that there is lots of waste. People invest in varieties, maybe they don't know how to handle them, and it doesn't work, they don't sell much. So there is a need for review urgently. So the value chain could help each other. I mean, we could give advices and so on and work together, but that doesn't happen because private companies, they consider that as a secret and they won't tell you, they don't let you into their secrets. Okay. What is the complaints that every part of the value system makes? For the breeders and the seed companies, they are complaining that Sonacos has 90% of the seed markets. This is old information. And the breeders and the private breeders, they complain that INRA has 65%. So, but in fact, this is a situation of competition and everybody is fighting for his place. So for farmers and related stakeholders, they complain mainly about their unsold production. They tell you that in a bad year, they have low production, and in a good year, they have good production, but it remains unsold. Nobody buys it, or they get a very little price for it. So that was a big problem, that is. There is, of course, state-suggested prices, but the state-suggested prices are not followed. For this situation, they blame imports. When the grain is there, imported, then everybody can just wait and let you play with your grain until you decide to lower the cost. Input costs are too much. Fertilizer and chemical treatments and so on work. Everything is becoming too much, but the money doesn't come in because when they go and sell it in the market, they don't give them a higher price. There are harsh and unproductive environments. The Moroccan environment is very unstable. I mean, dry, can get too much water and so on. Another problem is when farmers hear that millers tell them that they have no quality, then farmers say, there is no reward for quality. If you want quality, reward us for quality, and then we'll produce it. For the miller and pasta makers, they complain that there is, first, heterogeneous grain lots. A miller needs big lots that are homogeneous and good quality. If they are heterogeneous, they will not produce quality. If you produce a pack of pasta, and when you look at this pack of pasta, you'll find that half of it have a color, another half have another color, or half of it is specked with, then you won't buy it. The quality must be impeccable. Low quality is due to variety, production, and handling. Variety, mostly for durum, can be improved by variety, but 60–70% of the problem comes from the production and handling. What kind of grain you mix, what kind of production practices have you done, have you fertilized, have you not? This is very important. Generally for the millers, they make an assessment of grain quality by taking samples, like 1,000 samples all across Morocco, and they evaluate the quality, and they find that the quality for bread wheat is acceptable, good, is good sometimes, and some years very good. But for durum wheat is lacking color, they tell you. This is what they complain about. So the millers, tell you that they must import in order to stay competitive. Because if they don't produce good end products, foreign competition will come in and they will take the markets. So for durum wheat, the consumption of it goes through popular mills, the small mills. And bread wheat is very much uptaken by the industrial mills. The bakers, they complain that quality does not correspond to cost, so they complain about both, and that they hardly have any margin. They don't make lots of profits. But the public sector, the one who's supposed to handle all of this, they tell you that they keep the price of bread bearable. They don't want to price to go off bread, normal bread, to go over a dirham and 20 centimes. They say that's a limit. And then they work on the importation taxes. So you can import some date, you cannot import some other date, just so that the price of the national production will calibrate and get fixed during the year. Usually the prices are very low in June, July, or August, and they stabilize by December. So normally you could make good profit if you sell in December. So you have to have a way to store your grain. The Millers Federation, they have requirements for each crop they handle. They have one for durum wheat and one for bread wheat mainly. And this is what they want in their seed lot they buy. There is this when they buy the seed lots from the markets, and there is another set of criteria they do on the samples to see the inherent quality, what kind of bread or what kind of pasta or what kind of couscous that product will make. There are other tests. So the test they forward to you first was the test weight, and that has to do with how much flour or how much semolina will you get from that sample in percent. The 1,000 kernel weight has the same thing. The protein contents on dry matter should be 15%, which is difficult to produce because Moroccans don't put too much nitrogen. If you don't put nitrogen, you don't get proteins. And then you have humid glutens, which is the quality of glutens, over 30. This test has to do with acceptability for water. It has also to do with, it has to be over 30. Vitreousness, it has to be more than 90%. Vitreousness means that you had a hard vitreous kernel, not a floury kernel. If you have floury kernel, it will produce more flours and less semolina. And the millers, they want semolina in this case. Yellow pigment contents, 6 ppm. Humidity in the sample, never buy a sample that is more than 13%. Ash contents from 1.7 to 2.2, that's for, and then you have these grade, for grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. For each of these grades, you have a different value of these criteria. Now, when FNM contacted INRA and asked us to move on quality, we gave them like 20 something varieties, and they test them and they choose 3 of those varieties. And one of those varieties was Louisa, which we put to the catalog and was released. But now this Louisa is sitting somewhere. It's not being used because there are foreign varieties that are advanced. Louisa has a grain yield of 42 on average in the favorable area, in around the Casablanca, not the north. Humidity test was 12%. I mean, it's a variety that gets real dry. Test weight is 80.9, which is very high. way above the limit. Protein percent was 15.45, which is very good. Vitreousness, 98,000 calorie weight was 44. Semolina extract, 62. Brown index, 19, which is very low. And yellow index was 29 or 9 ppm. The millers, they ask only for 6 ppm, but this one has 9. So here is an example where national research has produced something, but this something is sitting somewhere not being used, where it could be producing. And we know that the price of durum wheat in the international market goes up and down very quickly. And when it does, it is the millers or the importers who suffer from it. So we need to produce this grain of variety in Morocco in order to help the millers and other people in the value chain. Now, with this thing about the value system, let's go back to the researchers. How to be ready for the environment and market swings and serve all this, the value system. We have to diagnose, keep diagnosing, keep analyzing, keep listening, learning, and educating. We have something to say, but we have something to learn. And when we do that, we improve the whole system. Get involved with all partners in value system, even if they are competitors. We have to talk, for example, for other seed companies and review the objectives and their priority level. We have worked enough on yield and adaptation, and now let's switch to grain quality, because grain quality, in fact, is not one criteria. Grain quality is composed of many, many things that you have to measure and select for in your new varieties. It's not an easy or simple objective. We have to foresee the changes and be prepared for them. Like, for example, we can foresee that people will try to will like something new, and then you develop it and you present it to them. And then if you sense that they will change to another, you follow them and go ahead of them. Get all the necessary means, including expertise. We have a lot of expertise, but within our system, but we don't call on them, all of them, in this matter. Get organized, team up for performance. Okay, I like, for example, the new system, or I have mega projects. It's a good thing, but they have to be made constant and long term. I mean, not changing every 5 years or so. Prepare solution for the short and the long term. Even for the short term, if you have something ready that doesn't include all the traits or the characteristics that you like, even though you work with it, and you keep for the long term the preparation of the coming material. Colon and use quality. Now, agronomy, socioeconomics. Those socioeconomics were involved with us for some times, and that was good. Agronomy, they were involved with us, but they were only working for yield, not for grain quality. Okay, these are technical things, but 2/3 of the problem of the value system are non-technical things. So while you are doing this, you have to wait to also let them fix their commercial and any other non-technical value. People will have to wait for the price, to fight for the price of quality, to fight for every criteria. There has to be lots of discussions, because this is commerce at the end. And these people involved in this commerce, they put their money in and they want to fight for it to defend the biggest parts of profits. This is normal. So we at the end, the researchers, we come up with technical solution that suits all of them or most of them. Now, having said this, let's look at how we could achieve our goals. So here we have in this first box the client demands and technical constraints, which could be summarized in improving yield and end-use quality, or improving sustainability. We have many things that we have many terms that can replace this and this or them together. When we have these objectives, then we go which discipline, which laboratories are necessary in order to do this job. Okay, we have a group that you will call genetic improvements, and that group of genetic improvements is searching for optimized genotypes for adaptation to environments, tolerance or resistance to stresses, and end-use quality traits. This is done by considering both yield and end-use quality. That's why I didn't put yield and end-use quality in this thing. Okay. Okay. The other group of science relates to agronomy. Of course, yield and grain and end-use. And these research types will search for the best practices for environment, for varieties, and environments by varieties. They will tell you which one is best under each of one of these. This is also considering considering yield and end-use quality. We have completely misregarded this, the relationship between agronomy and end-use quality. The least thing, if you don't put enough nitrogen, you won't have enough proteins, and if you don't have enough proteins, you don't have enough quality. But all the agronomy study I have seen in INRA before was talking about yield, adaptation, so on, but none about grain quality. So we have to do a big switch here in this square. Stress sciences, biotic stress control, pathogenic fungi, bacteria, and viruses, insects have to know them and how to fight them and to control them. This is already done, but it has to be followed. Abiotic stress is tolerance, drought, heat, biotechnology goes, in fact, here. We just stop here, drought and heat. Okay, this is also has been done, and now it's discontinued. Biotechnologies, in fact, it can work everywhere in all those three boxes. It can find use for it. And this use has to do with giving quick tests. Quick or maybe cheap. I don't know if they are cheap. End-use technologies. There have to be a link between end-use quality, and those stresses, biotic stresses, and abiotic stresses. For example, we know that shriveled seed is not good quality. A shriveled seed is produced either under biotic stress or abiotic stress tolerant. So there is a link between those two. Socioeconomic sciences, marketing strategies. This has to be done in order to help us market our, because the main point here is to know how to market our products and follow it up in order to help it get some success. Well, I think I will have to go. This is the breeding program. This is a bear breeding program. It's not. This is what we used to perform before. Priority here we have hybridization and segregation material, blah blah blah. Here you get what we do for our screening. We use representative sites, hotspots, and then we measure productivity and adaptation. Okay. If we could, we apply screening pressure. And then we use laboratories mostly for diseases and greenhouse also for diseases, for screening for disease resistance or tolerance. So this is like to say a bear breeding, conventional breeding program. What we wanted to develop and we started to develop is to have this bear breeding program, but this time covered with abiotic stress sciences, like analytical abiotic stress sciences, and a lot of this was done. We had about 4 or 5 agronomists working on analytical methodologies and field tests, also how to treat the field tests in order to do your plant breeding. We had also developed biotic stress groups where you could infect the crop for screening in the field, in the greenhouse, in hotspots, and even we had races for leaf rust with IAV. So this is the right way to go when you're talking about biotic stress. You have to have specific races. You have to know what specific races are there and how to fight them. End use quality also started in the years 2000, and we were talking about indirect tests, but we didn't have the means to do it, unless we have one colleague that did this for us, but only for few lines, not for the breeding programs. And also during this era, biotechnological tools were developed by the colleagues in Rabat and Stat and Meknes. Now, every one of each of these 3 sciences, abiotic stress, biotic stress, and end use, they have jobs they can do, and part of these jobs that they do will serve the breeding program. Okay, what they do? They study the abiotic stress sciences. They study the biotic stress basics and mechanism. They study the plant traits for performance and screening against abiotic stress. I'm talking about abiotic stress. And then developed direct and indirect tests. And from there, you go on to genetics of inheritance and inheritance of these criteria and constitution of marking population. And this here we have production of analytical screening, which should be applied on the breeding material. And here we have apply molecular screening, and at the end, plant breeding will benefit from that and produce the varieties that people like to see. For the biotic stresses sciences, there are many things they can do. Study of causal agents and study of methodologies, study of host pathogen interaction, which give us physiological races, and resistance genes. You could have resistance gene. If the resistance gene works on a physiological race that does not exist, then it would not be good. So you have to have relevant resistance genes to relevant physiological races that are present on it. And that is called working on the pathosystem characterization. So you got the pathotypes, I mean the race of the pathogen that exists in your area and their evolution. You have to know how if one gene is getting lost from your population or another gene is coming. So you have to follow the evolution of those races. Selection of particular resistances, virulences and resistances, disease surveillance. This has to be continued. Genetic studies of resistance and possibly making population and markers. That will give us, like I said, description of the characterization of the pathosystem, which will help us get isolates and screening methodology. This is what the breeder is interested in. And molecular markers, which will do the job of this for the benefits of the plant's breeding program, again, for the benefits of everyone. Okay, we had tried to develop, this was work with Dr. Margoum, who was a breeder, who worked on Fusarium root rods. We had a complete methodology. It was good. This is transport. This is what I did for my thesis. So I had races. I had 11 races, selected 11 races, and it worked for screening. This is screening in the greenhouse. Our colleagues, Bouhsini and Al-Haloui Saadiya, they had this population of flights for artificial inoculation. And this is how it worked. They rear the insects, and then they put them in those cages with the varieties, and you can see if the varieties are resistant or not. And this is the resistant variety in the field and susceptible variety in the field. And use quality sciences also, they are more difficult because it costs a lot.
Sorry, Dr. Nasrallah, for interrupting you. We have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Well, we got the whole thing for the grain quality similar to the other. And the problem now is you have all these disciplines, you have all this knowledge you have, but you have to apply them, not just have them put in your computer. You have to apply them, and who will be applying them is the question. The other crop science that we have forgotten that we should wake up to is cropping technology for yield and adaptation. Made good impacts before, but now cropping technology for end-use quality under the conditions of Morocco were almost absent. So we have to wake them up and work on it. The relationship of end-use quality with biotic and abiotic stresses to be addressed, and socioeconomic study for the whole value chain. That's very important. Conclusions: with value chain is undergoing an integration for better overall chain performance. Talking about competition, free trade, and strategic choices. Research and the millers were the one who's organized best is to go or are to go out and lead the wheat chain integration process, needs to educate the partners. Demand for research is and will be increasing. Competition also will be increasing. Research is to invest in relation science, laboratories, and in the integration of those in the long-term program. And use quality research is to be given higher priority, and same conclusion goes for all other commodities. I mean, red wheat, durum wheat, chickpea, lentil, everything that we produce for should benefit from this point of view. Now, this is the first variety resistant to Hassan fly quickly. And this is a view of Marshall Station with 25 hectares of trials. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasrallah, for this very rich talk, which allowed us to have a broad idea on the role of research that has been played in the past and the need to improve this sector in the future also and to meet the needs of the market. So we'll go to directly to the discussion session. We have some comments mainly linked, so people thanking for organizing this meeting and for inviting you as an outstanding expert in the field. So the first question is from Dr. Amamu. He said that, as you said, it takes up to 18 years to produce a variety and to be available to the farmers. However, we can shorten this time using other techniques, double haploid and summer planting in NASSER, for example. What is your opinion, Dr. Nasrallah?
Yes, before people has used this off-season nurseries. For example, we use this in Morocco. You plant during the winter in normal season, and you go to NASSER, which is cold during the summer, so you can plant your nurseries and they will grow up and give you crop. So you advance one generation like that. Of course, yes. By like we use the tissue control and so on. The thing that was being done by our colleague in Stat, Jamal, is to produce haploid, diploid, diploid, what do you call it? Haploid that you have diplodized and double the chromosome.
Double haploid.
Double. Yeah, thank you.
So his second question, with climate change, still we need to go for broad adaptation, even though we have a single national catalog, or go for specific adaptation by environment. Still, we need to go for selecting early genotypes. These two actually these are two questions. The first is or go so shall we have a single national catalog or go for specific adaptation by environment? What do you think about this one? And then I will ask the second one.
This is a question that is valid for most of breeders in the world. Now, when you present your variety to the catalog, you specify, you say this variety is a large adaptation, or for these zones, for example, here in Morocco, we say for favorable, or for unfavorable, or for mountains, for example, okay? And they normally should go and test your, if you say, for example, unfavorable, they would test your variety all over the places, but they will take in consideration the results of this variety in unfavorable area. That is right. That should be done. It's not done by that like that. In Morocco now, we have in the catalog, they tell you we measure the yield all over Morocco. The yield should be either equal or higher, and you should have some characteristic that is better than the checks. And that does not serve us a lot. I mean, that does not make things easy. When you talk to people from the ministry, they say, we have, for example, a variety cream that is good in the mountains, in the favorable, in the unfavorable, and it works. And you're coming to tell me that this variety. So it's, I think the correct way should be that there are a descriptive catalog system that tells you this variety is good all over Morocco, but it's better in the dryland, for example. And it will say this variety is better for in the favorable. At least give the choice of the area to the breeder, and at the end use the data that we have gotten in order to help the people who will buy this variety and use it. I hope sometime they will do that.
He asked also if we still need to go for selecting early genotypes. To go for selecting early genotypes.
It's up to a limit. Not too early, because Morocco is very drought prone. I mean, what does an early genotype does? In early genotypes, if he feels like there is a drought in that year, it will feel the heat, and it will quickly go on into the cycle. It will go into heading and maturity and so on. And if we go into genotypes that are too early, what might happen is, here in Morocco, we have droughts, some frequent droughts in January, February. Most people know that. They call it Jibdad Yanair, the drought of Yanair. So if you have that drought, if the variety is too early, it will head in February and mature in February. And suppose there is rain coming in March and April and so on, all of that rain would have gone to waste. So maybe earliness we stop to a point. Don't push it to the maximum.
Okay. It's linked to another question from Dr. Farrahi Muha. He said the climate change is a real challenge. How the breeding program should deal with these facts. He would like to hear from you as an expert who has experienced these constraints during your breeding program at INRA. What do you think?
In relation, what to do under the light of the changing climates,
yes.
Right?
Yes, right.
We have to watch it from many angles. There is the angle of the adaptation of the variety through analytical things, through its chemistry to physiology and so on. Okay. Like I said, with the question of Dr. Mamu is, don't go to the maximum. Never change the varieties to the maximum. Not too early, not too short, not too that, not too long, not too. Always stay in the middle, because the plants, they have a remarkable system of adaptation. Okay, but they need to be in the average, not in the extreme. The plants sense the environment through the evapotranspiration, through the presence of water, and through temperature. If there is so much evapotranspiration due to drought, they will sense that they are lacking water, because they will sense that they are becoming hotter. Evapotranspiration is made in order to cool the plant. Okay, so and it's evapotranspiration that makes the plants uptake minerals and water from the soil and grow. So these elements of nature, the plants know how to deal with them. Okay, so this is from the side of or the angle of biochemistry physiology. Okay, now for diseases and insects, we have to be very careful. We have to have Hassan fly resistance everywhere that goes so. We have to be aware of leaf rust, black rust also. Black rust likes it when it's wet and long season, but we have seen it few years. And then yellow rust. Those are things that might change. Why I say these three rusts? Because they are pathogens that are very sensitive to temperature and climate in general. If you change the climate, you might help the population of yellow rust mutate. In fact, it will not mutate but it will within the population for yellow rust, for instance, you have the normal, let's say YR34, for example, but you have a few thousands of new YR genes virulence. When you change the climate, you will push the YR34 out, and you favor this new mutant, which represented only 1% of the population, but with the climate change, that new race will come up, and maybe another one, another one. So we have to be careful with those diseases. Septoria does not like droughts, but we have to work with it. Tan spot also does not like drought, but it has to be. But the most thing is Hassan fly and the tree rust. The fourth thing is Septoria, I would say. Drought is sometimes favoring root rot. Root rot is not a big problem for bread wheat, but it is for durum wheat, because it also ruins grain quality. It makes discoloration, so it's not good. Insects, there are sometimes you see some new insects coming, but it just comes and leaves. You have in general to watch grain quality for because changing climates will give you shriveled seeds, sometimes less protein, sometimes more proteins. So that spills into heterogeneity, and heterogeneity by itself is a bad problem. Thank you.
So your answer answers also his following question: the most important things to focus in the future breeding at INRA for the next decade. You answered partly in your presentation. Okay. Yes. He asked also, is the yellow pigment still an issue in enhancing quality in durum wheat?
Pigment?
Yellow pigment. It is still an issue in enhancing quality.
Well, nobody knows the genetics of the pigments. They're the only people that are working with the extra yellow color for durum wheat are French, Italian, and Canadian. And these people will not give you anything about it. It's like they are private companies. And
it's still an issue or not? It's not actually.
Well, it's a market demand, but why people choose yellow color? Okay, long time ago, people had bread wheat and durum wheat. So some factories, they took hard bread wheat, which is white, and they made at that time what they call fdoush, pasta, from bread wheat. When you cook it, it becomes like a dough, and people did not know how to differentiate between durum wheat pasta and bread wheat pasta, except by the color. So they started to take or to buy only the yellow pasta, and that's how yellow got stuck with durum wheat. But anyway, the old varieties of durum wheat were yellow. Mm-hmm. They were not that yellow, but mm-hmm. So the breeders, the modern breeders now came and say, okay, these old varieties had yellow, people liked yellow, and there is a way to improve the concentration of yellow pigments. That's it. On the other parts of the question, maybe can we change? Can we add? For example, yellow pigments to pasta? No. It is forbidden by law to add anything to semolina. In order to be, the norm of durum wheat says it is forbidden to add anything. No eggs, no colorant, no nothing. You just take your grain, mill it, and sell it. That's it. Is this response to the question?
Yes, I think yes. Yeah. Thank you. There is a question from Filippo Bassi. He asked about how to convince the mills to pay for the extra nitrogen need for the protein. He said that in Italy, farmers provide 5 units of nitrogen by liquid fertilization after flowering just to gain protein. But grade 1 is paid 10 to 20% more than grade 2, which pays back the fertilizer cost.
There is a rule. You put 1.5 kilogram of nitrogen per quintal produced for barley. You put 2 kilograms to 2 point something per quintals of bread wheat produced. and you put 2.5 kilograms for durum wheat. That's a lot. From 1.5 or 2 to 2.5 is a lot of nitrogen. Now, in the places where you have lots of rainfall, not 2.5 will not do. You will have to put 3 or maybe more than 3, 3.5 or something, okay? Because the durum wheat, if the plant sees that there is good amounts of water, it will make sugars, okay, a carbohydrate, and it will keep making proteins at a constant rate. So making proteins does not respond to water as just like making carbohydrates response to water. Okay, so good conditions push for carbohydrates, and later on it will translate into lower protein content. We will not get to your 15% that we want, and we will get a grain that is yellow berry. It's like flour. So this is too much. This is cost. This is the problems with quality in Morocco. If you ask farmers to put 3 kilograms of nitrogen per quintals produced, it's impossible. He will not do it. Each quintal costs like 700 dirhams, and that's 2,000 dirhams just for the few quintals added. If you don't get an extra price for quality, this is not feasible. Plus, in Morocco, there is one other thing. It's dry place. Whenever you want to put nitrogen, you have to be sure that there will be rain, because when you put nitrogen, you need at least 30 millimeters of rain in order to make that fertilizer melt and get inside the soil and get uptaken by the plant. If you put nitrogen and it doesn't rain, that nitrogen will stay on the ground and it will evaporate or get taken by the wind or something. Anyway, a lot of it will get lost. So there is a real problem with this thing, with nitrogen and so on, application in Morocco. Some people in FNM, they say, why don't we put irrigation? Irrigation would cost a lot. Irrigation, when you irrigate durum wheat, most of the time you get a lot of yellow berry. So kind of going backward. Does this respond to the question?
He asked how to convince the mills to pay. The mills will pay. Normally, he assumed that the mills pay for the extra nitrogen that will be given to the plants. Can we convince them, and how to do? This is here's the question, as I understood.
How do we convince them? Through the market, the market rule. That means, what I mean by this is, now the millers buy lots of durum wheat from abroad, okay, and that's their right. But the price of durum wheat in the market sometimes go way higher than normal, and it becomes impossible because it doesn't let you any margin. Okay, so the day that they don't have any margin, they will come back to the national market, and the national market will have to produce something good for them that they would accept. Because when they will come back to the market, they will be inherently ready to accept to pay something more. Now, by the way, they say they will. There is a prime for quality, but it's just not too much. I mean, because the prices of fertilizers, of work, and labor, and so on in agriculture are always going up. Nothing is going down. All the prices go all the costs go up. So how do we convince the millers? By talking to them and let them see what happens. Show them how much we lose, on how much we spend and how much okay, and it will work. And then they will look at the market and they will accept. Yeah.
We'll go to the next question from Abdelmunaim Zarwal. He asked he asked, can we develop a breeding program for adaptation to a particular cropping system, like no-till system?
We talked about that with the team in Stad, and okay, we put some lines in the field where they planted with no-till and the field that they planted normally. But the problem was that we didn't repeat the experiment. There was 1 year data, and then we stopped. So you cannot really, well, again, so I will have to answer just through what I think. Does no-till have problem in Morocco? Like a particular disease or particular something or a particular problem with soil and so on? I don't know, not yet. We have to practice no-till for many, many years in order to see if there is a problem and how difficult is that problem, and then we start working with it. The way to do it is to take a panel of genotypes and put them in both system, and after 2 years, 3 years, you go and look what's the problem. Are there problem with roots? Are there problem with compaction? Are there problem with the root rot, for example, disease, and so on? And you keep going. So this is a kind of good project for students. Like one researcher can have this year 2, 3 students, they will have counting and so on, observation, and next year and next year. It takes time to follow a thing and make the observation.
Or maybe learn from previous experience in other countries, like Australia, to see what concerns they have in this system and try to answer the question.
I used to know people from Australia, and I even visited there, and I haven't seen any breeding program for the only thing I have seen there was a breeding program for crown rust. So there they had a problem with crown rust due to Fusarium, and this problem was more, they say, a problem in no-till system. So that is a kind of a breeding program for no-till, but addressing only one aspect of the problem. That's why I said we have to observe the situation many years. You cannot just start from here and say.
Yes. The comment from Mahjoub Sahaba, I think we fully agree with you. He said that price of durum wheat went up in Canada, for example, because the production this year decreased by 40%. The strength on the international durum wheat is at the present very high, with he thinks it's time to develop local durum varieties to match with the imported wheat. I think, yes, I let you say if you have something to say in this.
Like I said, we have to prepare some solution for
to develop local durum varieties.
Yes,
we
have now. Oh, okay. My friend Sahaba, he knows the variety Louisa. He have seen it, and now there is a variety Hamadi. Was Mamo actually is following that thing. We have increased the seed, and we're trying to convince them to adopt one of these 2 varieties for their local production. I hope it will work.
Dr. Leon Bouai said with the COVID crisis, the food sovereignty was raised again. At the same time, we know that we don't have a competitive advantage in the cereals production in Morocco, especially for wheat, because of the average yields. So she's asking you, in your opinion, how can we strike a balance between food security and the economic benefits that farmers can derive if they adopt other crops?
How can we adapt between integration and
no, between food security, between encouraging the cultivation of cereals?
I would say, again, don't go deep. You see, if you are the government of Morocco, what is your primary goal now? I put that in, is that to have bread ready every day on the table for people, to have flour being sold in the market. That's you cannot stop the supply chain. Okay. But in doing this, you are doing what they call centrally planned economy. Centrally planned economy, it's like you have a socialist politics or communist politics with a capitalist politics. How do you balance between them? What Morocco have done, I think, is we have a national flour with the prices that is controlled, and that is the price that most of us, that is the bread that most of us eat, the one that costs dirham. And then there is a free sector with better flour, with things coming from abroad, better quality, but with higher prices. And you are free to buy it if you want, and it's just if you have the markets, you do. But it's true, for this question, it's like an arrow with two senses. You always have to keep in the safest thing, you know. I don't know.
Actually, it's a trade-off. Okay, thank you, Dr. Nasrallah. I will give the floor to Dr. Farrahi if he has something to say as an expert also in the field. Please go ahead, Dr. Farrahi, and then I will say something at the end.
Okay, thank you, Badr. Again, I would like to thank Dr. Nasrallah for his very rich webinar. The questions actually were very, very interesting. I had one point I wanted to raise with Dr. Nasrallah, actually. I don't know if we have time. You know, in the last years, we have seen that the share of the INRA varieties in the market, you know, in the sold seed in the market, the share of our varieties is less than 30% right now. We are at 29%. And we used to be more than 80% of the INRA varieties in the share in the market. And the question that has been raised is what are the reasons for that? And when we sit with the companies that increase, the seed increase companies, the Sanakos and so on, and they said that the bottleneck, actually the bottleneck of this is that we don't have enough pre-base seed, you know, G1 and G2. There is not enough, INRA does not make enough seed of G1 and G2, mainly G2, to provide those seed increase companies with enough quantities. So in that way, we can increase the INRA variety share in the market. And the INRA, as you know, Nasrallah, last year, 2021, has launched a very ambitious program in the seed increase program. And there is a commission of that, which was headed by the INRA DG, and there are several breeders and managers in that committee. And we had last year almost 20 hectares of G2 and 15 hectares of G1. and I wanted, if you don't mind, Dr. Bujulun, Dr. Nasrallah can let some light, let some, what are his point of view in this matter of this increase in the INRA varieties, and also the preference. There are many imported varieties right now in the catalog, and the farmers in Morocco are using those imported varieties. Due to preference of the farmers in Moroccan farmers, the preference are now getting less and less for Moroccan varieties as we compare them to the imported varieties. If we can give 5 minutes to Dr. Nasrallah to shed some light on these issues. And thank you again, Dr. Nasrallah, for accepting our invitation for this webinar. Thank you, Badr. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry. We exceeded the allocated time, dedicated time to this webinar by 10 minutes. So if I would like to ask you, Dr. Nasrallah, if you can answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, there was a normal process starting in the 80s, and this process is done by the World Bank and the FME on all the nations that are following these institutions. This process says that all the public sector should be one day released and replaced by private companies. In this respect, one of the sector that benefited from this process was seed sector. So from the 1980 to now, the multiplication of varieties has is incredible. I mean, so you have lots of companies, and these companies, they don't know the Moroccan markets. They don't know the markets, some of them, and they think that there is a high potential for trade for them in Morocco, which is not completely true. Which is not completely true because, for one thing, seed increase process is very complicated. It does take a lot of effort to stay clean and mix grain and mix. You don't make your seed loss. It's very difficult. We don't notice it, but the experiment station that handle seed increase in INRA, you can see that they're putting a lot of work in it. Okay. This brings us to the reason why companies buy their varieties from abroad. If they buy a variety from Morocco, they will have to go to C0, G1, G2, G3, and then to G4. That is a lot of headache in those 3 first years. You might increase 1 hectare or half a hectare or 2 hectares, and then the certification team comes and they say, cut out. This is mixed. It's not correspond, not certified. So you lose 3 years and you stay there. On the other side, if you buy pre-based seed, I mean, base seed from abroad, G4, already certified, that's it. So if INRA or somebody else could start the business of producing these G3 or G4 seed and selling them, it would be a good business for them if the varieties are good and so on. But this is a lot far-fetched. But you put your finger on the right problem. I mean, it's and the system is very difficult. So this is why I'm always saying integration. I mean, people have to stop and start talking and see how they can fix their problems together. Okay, INRA, for example, might consider the private companies as competitor, or the private companies might consider INRA as a competitor. But when they get together, they will, it's like horizontal integration. They will discuss the problem and how to fix them. Okay. if they find a way to fix them, it's to the benefit of both parties. Okay, so this is I think my answer to your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Salah. The floor is yours, Badr. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nasrallah. There is a last comment from my colleague, Abdelwahid Belghiti. He said that actually it's a comment. He said that there is a need for the researchers to hear the professional needs. They must, and he said that this is the final, this is a main message of your talk now today. Inshallah. And yes, I fully agree. And do you have something to say about that? Would you like to comment, Dr. Nasrallah?
No, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nasrallah, for this very, very, very rich talk and also the very rich session of discussions. At the end of this webinar, I would like to mention to all the participants that just after you leave the meeting, the Zoom meeting, you will get a very short survey, actually 3 questions survey to get your assessment of this webinar series. Please fill it. It will be more than helpful for us. Also, I would like to mention that the next webinar is scheduled after 2 weeks. My colleague Butaina is going to share with you. She shared already the flyer of this webinar. It will be entitled "The Seed Treatments, Benefits, Global Market Evolution and Trends." It will be presented by Dr. Brigitte Slat. She's seed care technical expert in Europe, Africa, and Middle East in Syngenta. So looking forward to be with us in 2 weeks, the same time in 2 weeks. Finally, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to thank everyone who participated today and thank our guest speaker again, Dr. Nasrallah, for his talk, and also Dr. Muha Farrahi for his help in this conference. I would like to thank warmly my colleagues Butaina Abidou, Uthman Sabatar, Dad Tirazi, and Abdelaziz Yasri for their crucial contribution to the organization of this series. So see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Salama.